everybody. Today I'm going to make a mole sauce. Now there are tons of ways and different variations of mole, and this is actually my favorite way to make it. And I guess you could call it sort of like a chocolate mole sauce because lots of chocolate goes into it. Okay, to get started, I'm going to use 2 pasilla chiles, 10 guajillo chiles, and 4 ancho chiles. I've gave those a rinse and remove the stems. And if you want this to be mild, remove the seeds as well. I'm also going to use 2 tomatillos and 3 Roma tomatoes, 7 to 8 cloves of garlic, and a half of a medium-sized onion. I'm going to broil this to get some charring, but you will need to be careful if you are going to broil this because the chilies do not take very long to get toasty. I actually did end up charring some of my chilies, and I actually don't mind that because it does add nice color and smoky flavor to the mole sauce, but if you take it too far, it'll get very bitter, so just watch out for that. I'm going to broil the chilies for less than a minute and everything else until it chars. Now, the other ingredients, I'll be using 8 to 10 ounces of chocolate. This is a bittersweet chocolate. I'm also going to use a half cup of Sunbutter. You could use peanut butter. And I'm also going to use around 6 to 7 prunes. You could use raisins, a third cup of raisins in place of that. I'll also use 1 teaspoon of Mexican oregano. And this is optional, 1 chipotle pepper in adobo sauce, 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and a pinch of ground clove. Now, the chipotle is optional because that will give it a medium spice to this. Okay, so I've removed the chilies from the broiler. As you can tell, it did char on one side. I'm actually okay with that, but if you don't want it to char, like I said, just take it out sooner from the broiler. You want to just at least toast them. I am going to pour hot water over all the chilies, and I'm going to let them steep for about 30 minutes until they get soft and pliable. I'm also going to put a plate right on top because that will help keep the chilies submerged while they're steeping. So again, I'm going to let this steep for at least 30 minutes. I want them to be soft and pliable. Okay, so I've removed everything else from the broiler, and I forgot to mention you'll also want to add 2 corn tortillas. You could also use bread, or sometimes I use saltine crackers, basically something that's going to add body and thicken this sauce. So I'm using 2 corn tortillas. And I also want to show you, once you broil and toast or char your garlic, you'll want to peel off the husk from each clove. But you'll want to make sure you keep that on because you don't want burnt garlic. Okay, so I'm going to use a food processor to start pureeing everything, and honestly I probably should have just started with my blender, but I was lazy. Literally the blender is probably 5 feet away from me, but the food processor was out, so I started with the food processor. So basically you are going to blend all of your charred ingredients, and once the chilies become pliable, I will also puree that. And I forgot to mention earlier, you will want to prepare at least 6 to 7 cups of chicken broth. Now, I like to use chicken broth. If you have homemade chicken stock or store-bought chicken broth, use what you have and just adjust the seasoning and salt to your preference. So I'm adding the chilies, and I need to add the oregano right into the puree because I want to puree that. And I'm going to give that a good mix, or at least a good puree. And also you'll want to add that chipotle pepper. And the other thing I forgot to add at this point, and I will add it later, is the prunes. And I know that sounds weird. You're like, prunes? But honestly, one day I did not have any raisins, and I substituted it with prunes, and now I use prunes in my mole sauce because I like it. But if you don't have prunes or don't want to use prunes, use raisins. Okay, so everything is pureed at this point, and I'm just going to give it a mix. And now I'm going to sieve this. Now, I will forewarn you, if you have like a really good Vitamix, you probably don't need to even sieve this, but even if I had a Vitamix, I still like to sieve out anything that's not smooth or creamy, because in the end, it really does give you the silky mole sauce. So it's up to you. So as you can see, I still have a lot of things that I can puree, so this is where I added the prunes. I remembered I needed to add the prunes. So I pureed all that together, and again, I'm going to sieve it. And throughout this process, this whole pureeing and blending process, I used 2 cups of chicken broth. Again, in this whole recipe, you'll need at least 6 to 7 cups of chicken broth. So the rest of my ingredients are 8 to 10 ounces of chocolate. Honestly, I like to use 10 ounces of bittersweet chocolate. I'm going to use a half cup of Sunbutter. You could substitute that with peanut butter. I'm a nut-free house. I'm also going to use 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground cinnamon and a pinch of ground clove. And here's the tricky part. Well, it's not really tricky, but the sugar and salt is to your taste and preference. So however salty and how much sweet you want to balance this sauce with, it's up to you. Okay, so here I'm preheating my pot and I am going to add some oil. Now I did want to show you here, I basically took 7 cups of water, and to the 7 cups of water, I added bouillon powder. And the powder that I use, most of you know, I like to use Knorr. And I just added, per cup of water, I added 1 teaspoon of this bouillon powder base. Now you can use a more natural chicken stock or broth, whether it's homemade or from the store, but this is what I'm using in this recipe. Okay, so at this point, my oil should be preheated. And again, I'm not working with a high heat. I don't want to burn anything in this pot, so I'm working with a gradual medium heat, and I'm going to pour all of that sieved, silky smooth puree into this pot. And this is the start of a beautiful thing. This is absolutely one of my all-time favorite dishes to make. And a little side story, on my honeymoon when I got married, my husband had never tried mole, and we went to Mi Tierra in San Antonio. Shout out to my San Antonio people who know about Mi Tierra. I ordered mole and he ordered fajitas, and guess what? He had never had mole and he ate my entire plate. As usual, he loves to eat my food, so he loves mole. Alrighty, so I'm adding the cinnamon and ground clove, and again, a lot of these seasonings are to your taste. So if you want more cinnamon, add more. If you don't want any, don't add it. But I like to add a pinch of cinnamon and ground clove. Now I'm going to mix that in. And then once that is combined well, I'm going to start adding the chocolate. So when I came up with this mole sauce recipe, I kind of had to do a substitution for the chocolate, because typically I would just add around 1.5 tablets to 2 tablets of the abuelita hot chocolate. But because my kid has nut allergies, I try not to use things that are processed in a facility that uses nuts, or, cross-contamination with his food allergies. So today I am using a peanut-free, gluten-free, bittersweet chocolate, and I'm using 10 ounces of that. And I'll show you, for those of you that maybe are interested or have nut allergies, this is the brand that I'm using. And it's 74% cacao in this bittersweet chocolate. And again, it's peanut-free, it's gluten-free, and it works well in a lot of my recipes just to make sure that it's, allergy-friendly for my kid. So I'm going to work that in. But if you do decide to use the abuelita hot chocolate in this mole sauce, just adjust the ratio of sugar, because abuelita hot chocolate does come with more sugar than what this bittersweet chocolate comes with. So again, a lot of this is going to be to your taste. Okay, so once the chocolate is worked in, I'm also going to add the Sunbutter. And again, Sunbutter is just something I keep in the house because obviously I'm not going to have peanut butter. But if you have peanut butter, that works just fine. The 2 things that I used to use in my mole sauce before my son had nut allergies, or before we found out, I would always use abuelita hot chocolate and peanut butter in my mole sauce. So that has changed, but you can definitely do that if you do not have any allergens to certain foods. Okay, so my mole sauce is starting to look almost done. I'm excited. Now I'm going to add sugar to my taste. Ultimately, I ended up using 3 tablespoons of sugar, and the sugar I'm using is a natural cane sugar. That's why it's not white. It has a little tinge of golden brown to it. Now I'm going to add salt to taste, and I suggest you do the same. You want to taste this mole sauce throughout just to get an idea of kind of to adjust the ingredients. So I'm just going to mix this, and I'm going to allow the mole sauce to simmer for at least 30 minutes on a low, gentle simmer. So once the mole sauce has simmered for around 30 minutes, actually I had this simmering on low for around 45 minutes, and I covered it. I'm just going to give it a mix, and I'm going to set it aside. I'm going to show you the other things that I'm going to cook today with this dinner. Obviously, a lot of people will make chicken to go with mole, and that's exactly what I'm doing today. Here I have almost 2 pounds of chicken breast. You can use the cut of chicken of your choice, and you can cook it however you want to cook it. Today I'm just going to put mine in the oven and bake it. So I'm going to season it liberally with garlic powder, some onion powder, salt, and pepper, and that's it. If you have a favorite rub or a favorite way that you like to season your chicken, do that. And honestly, I know growing up we would actually just boil a whole bunch of chicken, but I find it easier when I'm fussing over my mole sauce to just bake the chicken and then let it rest until everything is done. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to bake my chicken in a preheated oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for around 20 minutes, or until the internal temperature of the chicken reaches 165 degrees Fahrenheit in the thickest part of the chicken breast. Once it's done, I'm going to cover it and allow it to rest. I will also be making a simple chicken broth rice. Here I preheated a pan, and I'm using 1 cup of long grain rice. And I'm going to toast it until it's golden brown, and then I'm going to add 1 whole onion and saute that. That is optional, by the way, we just like onions. And to that I will add 2 cups of chicken broth. Again, I use 2 cups and 2 teaspoons of the chicken bouillon powder. I'm adding pepper, and I'm also going to add a little bit of garlic powder. I'm going to give that a mix, and then I'm bringing that up to a gentle simmer. I'm going to add some fresh cilantro and a couple stalks of scallions. I'm going to cover that with a lid, lower the heat, and cook it for around 18 to 20 minutes until the rice is done. I'm going to uncover it and just fluff it a bit, and it's ready to serve. Now I'm going to show you how I serve this up. So my mole sauce is done, and as you can see, it has thickened quite nicely thanks to the corn tortillas in this, and also the chocolate and Sunbutter. So I'm just going to pour it right over my chicken breast, and it's just, it smells so good in my kitchen, and the sauce is perfect. And I'm just going to garnish it with some toasted sesame seeds, and it is done. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you are new, I hope you consider subscribing to my channel. I sure would appreciate it. And again, be sure to click the bell notification to get all my newest videos. So I'm ready to dive in. It's just, this mole sauce is definitely one of my favorites, and this will definitely make enough to feed at least 6 to 8 people. It just depends on how much chicken you're going to make, and whatever we don't eat today, I will save it. But in the meantime, I hope you guys give this recipe a try. I hope you like it, and thanks for watching.